All right, and we are live today. Welcome back to the Modern Merchant Podcast. My name is Austin, host here, and I have our CEO Travis and CTO Matt back on with us today. And today we're going to be talking about a fun one. This is something that's been going on for a while, just in the term of drop shipping in e-commerce. But we're going to talk about why drop shipping can be viewed negatively. Travis, Matt, thanks for joining, guys.
Appreciate it, man. Looking forward to this one.
And we got the fancy mic. We got the Yeti Blue, so that's a shout out. Matt's got his now, so we look good. Oh, and that fancy new chair back there as well. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be talking about a bunch of things in regards to drop shipping and why it can be viewed in a negative asset. The first thing I want to oh, muted myself there. Happy National Hand Roll Day and Fried Chicken Day. In case you're gonna have some fried chicken today, probably pub sub sounds about great right now. And let's start. So quick breakdown. If you don't know what dropshipping is, we've already talked about dropshipping. Dropshipping, I'm selling online, selling to consumers. I sell mics. I don't house these mics in my warehouse. My distributor does. So when I get an order for this mic, I send that order to the distributor. Distributor packs it up, sends it to my end customer. I don't see it at all, hence drop shipping. Now, what we want to start out with this, and I'm going to pass this over to Travis specifically, because we've talked about this a bunch in the past. And this is where so many people view drop shipping, or they say drop shipping is a business model, and they're saying it wrong, right? Drop shipping is not technically a business model. There's so much more that goes into your business besides just drop shipping. I mean, there's marketing, customer service, tech, like anything that you can think of for running a business. So why don't you take it away, Travis, and talk to us how drop shipping is not a business model?
Yeah, sure. This is specifically around kind of the newbie online seller, the person looking online to and looking around YouTube to try to find a way to make money online. We're going to talk a little bit about why it gets a bad name or can get a bad name when we talk about the traditional retailer and traditional. But the other part of this is just someone learning about e-commerce and online selling for the first time. And there's a lot of these gurus out there kind of promoting this, how to make money, how to get rich quick. And here's this business model, this new found business model on how to make money online. And it's called drop shipping. And, a business model really involves, understanding, you look at your like SWOT analysis, like your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, right? Like a business is more than just a way to fulfill a product, which is what dropshipping is. Dropshipping is a fulfillment strategy that has certain benefits, has its own strengths and weaknesses that we'll talk about. But a business is, competing against other competitors in the market, finding a strategic selling proposition, a competitive advantage, a way to go to market, an advertising strategy. There's so much more that goes into a business than I found a product that I can buy after I sell it online. And dropshipping is a fulfillment model that can be leveraged within a business of all different kinds, whether you're a multi-billion-dollar business like Amazon leveraging dropship as a fulfillment model, or you're someone just starting off and wanting to sell online and using dropshipping as your fulfillment model, not necessarily your business model, which includes many other things that make it a business.
It's kind of like that, like you said a little bit earlier. It's a low barrier to entry, right? Like anybody can just start drop shipping. I could go buy Shopify, I could go upload Oberlo, I can start drop shipping Aliexpress products on my website, and bam, like I'm starting to go. So it's kind of that takes me kind of to the first topic of why it can be viewed, negatively is it's just low barrier to entry, so anybody can start doing it. Anybody can start drop shipping, but are you a legitimate business? And that's why it's kind of frowned upon. Like how many of us have gotten got by someone drop shipping really bad like products from, I mean, it doesn't have to be China
Uh,
specifically, but like I 100% have. What did
I
you what did you buy?
I bought a ratchet like socket that you basically add on to a ratchet that has a bunch of teeth on it that you can pull a strip screw out. Not like I ever strip screws. I'm a very, I never strip a screw. No, but honestly, like it was like genius. I was like, oh, this is great. Every strip screw, I can just easily just back it out with this like ratchet thing. I've never used it, just, never used it because all my screws are still perfectly intact. But it took, I saw it on Instagram, I bought it, and it took like 90 days or something to get to me. I almost forgot about it. It was like super cheap. They teach you that in these like guru, like do something that's cheap and really like impulse driven. They sent me two of them. I literally, didn't really think much about when I was buying it. And I didn't check anything. I can't remember if I actually thought like, I can't see how much it's going to take to ship, but whatever. It's only $12 or it's only $14 or whatever. And they sent me two, and it clearly came from China with Chinese packaging. I couldn't even tell you the website I bought it from, right? There was no like, I'd never become a repeat purchase or repeat customer. So, yeah, we all kind of, stumble across that in our online selling journey and
Yeah.
buying journey.
I bought a watch that was like marketed as, oh, it's free. You just have to pay for shipping. It was so dumb. It was such a bad idea. And it was exactly that. It took forever to get to me. I did forget about it, completely forgot about it. And then it showed up one day and it had, Chinese lettering and packaging all over it. And um, it broke, I think, 5 minutes in to like opening it out of the package. Like it literally just fell apart, like completely fell apart. And I was just like, wow, okay, I just got like 100% on it was, some or Burlow person that was selling on Instagram and got me on like an impulse buy. So I understand that. Do you ever got, Matt?
Knock on wood, I have not yet gotten got. I guess I just don't really order too many kind of miscellaneous products like that, but I've definitely seen it. I've heard it, and I've got in other scenarios like you go to Mexico and you buy the gold carat watch, and obviously it's not, but the impulse is there and you want it, so you just get it. So
Yeah.
I can see how it's pretty easy though.
And that kind of takes to the next point where, it is viewed negatively because either, some of us that are still in the e-commerce space that have gotten really faulty products has kind of put that bad taste in our mouth, and we instantly think, a lot of us instantly think to the dropship realm. And whenever you hear dropship, you research dropship, you're getting ads on YouTube about new gurus, new courses out there to start making tons of money and all that. We all instantly think to Oberlo, AliExpress, right? It's always this like drop shipping from China, really cheap and easy, these apps that you can just download and start selling online. And that just kind of gives that connotation of this isn't a business, right? This is a side hustle. That's kind of like the big thing where it's drop shipping always has that same term of side hustle, passive income, which we don't see any. I mean, like with our companies that we work with and a lot of big businesses out there that utilize drop shipping, especially nowadays.
Well, real quick, on that, it's like I think we're talking about, like I was kind of alluding to earlier, two different scenarios here. The newbie kind of online seller and getting the bad reputation there, and that's what dropshipping is associated with. And then the traditional retailer that is in retail, understands the wholesale game and buying in bulk and bringing to their warehouse. They also, there's a bad reputation in that as well. Even if they're not even associated with the newbie, they might never even watch YouTube videos about drop shipping, but just in general, they also have a bad taste in their mouth, or might view it negatively because of all the complexity. And I'm going to bounce around a little bit on kind of what we have outlined here, and maybe kick it over to Matt here on a couple of these, because the biggest thing for me is retailers are used to buying in bulk, bringing it in house, and the second that they want to go and start dropshipping, they rely a lot on their partner network, and things can fall completely apart. And we've seen that break down. And on the flip side, suppliers, to your low barrier entry, they are used to working with these large retailers who don't even want to do it, and only these newbies that don't have the capital to start were the ones asking them. That's changing more and more. So I think there's also this in the traditional retail world. There's this aversion to relying a lot on your partners, but also the technology had not caught up there yet. And I think that's what Matt and his team is trying to help with from the technology pieces to kind of get us up to speed so that people feel and they trust more in the drop shipping model in general.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback off that, right? Like loss of control is a big piece because if you're drop shipping, like you said, you have to trust those partners now to be able to deliver on your same standards, right? The same shipping times, the packaging quality, the quality of the actual product, which you may have never even interacted with because you're just kind of getting a data feed. And so, it's up to you to do this curation of that and make sure it's legitimate and it's a good trusted vendor or distributor, or even if you're leveraging it from like a third party logistics, you have to vet that, right? And really feel like confident in that to give up that control of, quality check and everything. So I see that a lot. And also, like you said, the complexity of integrating and, invoicing to a single order to sales order versus ordering a pallet of inventory and owning that and feeling like you have a really good control on your inventory levels and everything. There's a ton of complexity that comes in play with it. So from that perspective of that established retailer leveraging dropshipping, those are kind of their barriers where they just feel like they're losing control, or it's very complex to manage a financial piece of that and make sure that it's all legitimate.
Yeah. Now I want to talk on this, like the supplier side, just to, like maybe focus on like one type of customer that, typically does not want to hear the word drop ship or says, I don't do it or whatever. I mean, I think back to, I've brought this up before, but I used to walk, and I still do, just been a while, walk trade shows and talk to wholesalers, like the supplier side, the distributor, who traditionally will sell their items, sometimes brands as well, sell their items into retailers. And this was early on. This was at the start of my career. And I can't remember what the angle was, but I was just basically asking like, hey, do you drop ship? Right. This was before inventory sources, at the start of current commerce, I believe. And just asking if they drop ship. And the overwhelming, it was either who's asking, was like, literally, they just straight up say that, like, who are you? Like maybe, or no, like, no, please walk away from my booth. I want to talk to someone who does not use that word. And the reason why, like that's the main response was, typically they only dealt with like the large Walmart, Amazons, whatever. And those were the only ones that made sense to drop ship for, because the technology was not there. Their process was not there. There was no third party warehouse that specialized it. They could ship those items to. All of those things had to come together, which are still not all there, right? We're trying to really push the limits on what technology and the drop shipping platforms can do that support both the traditional model and drop ship, as well as connect to third party warehouses. So we're helping to kind of bridge that gap, like many other of our competitors, honestly. So it's still kind of getting pulled up to where it needs to be. But yeah, the need for that, but then also the explosion of like the digital first online retailer didn't exist. So there was not the push from legitimate good retailers that were digitally native, that started online, that had a audience through Instagram or their blog, or the mommy bloggers type kind of thing, where they didn't have a brick and mortar, they didn't have that clout or that brick and mortar audience, but they had an audience online, and dropship wasn't that wasn't as popular of a model. So all of those kind of coming together is making it less of an issue and being viewed less negatively and in more of a positive light, and people are opening up to it. But that's why I love being in the dropship industry, because every good startup, every good company you hear about is kind of in a spot where people are like, you're crazy, or why would you do that, or that doesn't make sense, or dropship is still very much it's a skeptical eye to dropship. But if you pull back and you look at it at a fulfillment model and all the advantages of a fulfillment model, it's just missing a couple pieces. It's missing the buy-in from both sides. It's missing the good technology, and those things are all kind of slowly coming together.
I think too, from like a support standpoint, with the distributor, a lot of the guys, they would take on people that, hey, you want to drop ship? Sure, come on in. And they would have the necessary credentials, right, to be an approved reseller of their products. But managing that many people was like such a burden in itself, because if you were drop shipping, that means I'd had to set up an FTP for you, or I'd have to set up some type of, I got to get you in my system. And they do all this work to get these dealers in, to then realize like, oh, this is someone that's new doesn't have an amount of sales volume or said they did, but they actually didn't. And then they were just kind of getting, like you're saying, like burned for like getting all these people in, doing all this work. And I bet a lot of distributors went through that to then not just like the outside noise, made it sound like drop shipping's bad. It was like the inside of like we did all this work for all of these retailers that said they drop ship, they do all these sales, and they haven't done anything. And so it was like the support of handling all those customers was just it was unknown. It was unknown if those customers can actually push volume through them and start, buying products. That's why with bulk, people would distributors would be like, if you're buying in bulk, you are my customer, and like I will adhere to you and everything that you need, versus all of these drop shippers that are doing volume but actually never ended up doing it. So I think that's something, another important thing to come into play.
Yeah, I mean, that's real quick. That's a good point. We've seen that where, yes, we will drop ship for you, but you need to do this much in wholesale business first, which I think is a great model. If you're not set up to do drop ship yet, a distributor, supplier, brand, like you can say, yes, we drop ship. And that's why they're asking, who are you? Right. And that's a valid question, because you got to run a business in a way that makes sense for you. And you can't take in all this inbound work. But the technology side too, they also didn't know how to support them. Right. So, I mean, I guess Matt, like that's probably good. Like, what are those main things like from the supplier side that's like, having to learn
Yeah.
to support them in a new way?
Yeah. And so, I mean, as we've seen, every supplier distributor has a different method of integration generally. So you've got to deal with that variance of complexity, which is kind of part of it. But really, like if you're a supplier and you want to offer dropshipping as a service, let's say, you've got to have an automatic way to intake orders. You've got to have an automatic way to output shipments. You've got to have an automatic way to invoice for that order so that they can track the financials of it. And then you also, like the big one, right? This is probably the most challenging for people, is you've got to have a way to give an up-to-date, frequently set of inventory and pricing changes as this happened too, because people need to react to those, right? If you have now, let's say you have 100 retailers that you're supporting and you're drop shipping for. If one of those retailers makes a sale, all of the 99 retailers need to know about that, because they have to be able to decrement that inventory from their site so that you actually show what you truly have in house now. And so generating, I mean, as your catalog size increases, if you're 500,000 SKUs or something like that, generating an updated feed of inventory data like that is it's very cumbersome and it's expensive technologically, unless if you architect things right from the very beginning. But many of these drop shippers are kind of adapting this model, right? They're not, drop shipping first within their platforms. So a lot of complexity in giving and having the funnels to receive orders and provide shipment and invoice data, as well as being able to distribute updated inventory lists. And the other big challenge, right, that this doesn't update as frequently, but you need to be able to give your resellers enough product information so they can actually make a sale too, right? And so generally speaking, imagery, decent descriptions, all of this stuff that normally you would just kind of ignore to some extent, maybe get it from a manufacturer or something like that. But, it might be that historically retailers would kind of adapt that themselves. They would work on the listings, they would beef up the descriptions, and they would take their own pictures and imagery to be able to paint that product in the best light. And this model, you just can't do that, right? You have to have some sort of at least starting point of that data that you can push up to be able to make a sale too. So it does add a lot of burden to the person actually drop shipping. But the value is, once you set that system up, it's pretty much just exponential growth, right? You're not really having to worry about the intricacies. You're just making sure that you have these automated feeds and these data channels set up so that you can kind of adapt more and more people over time.
That's 100%. Once you set the system up, there's a lot of upfront investment and cost. And if you don't have the demand side of quality retailers coming in and wanting this from you, and you're not adding a competitive advantage, then it doesn't make it worth it, right? And but that's where it's kind of that chicken and egg thing, where now you're seeing more and more quality retailers require it and want it, so people are making more of an investment in the more distributors, brands, the supply side, making an investment in dropship. one thing we don't talk about, returns, obviously, is more from like a process standpoint. From a tech perspective, it's tough to automate because there's a lot of decisions that need to be made there. But returns, is another issue. But really, if you invest in it, we don't talk about this a lot, where there's a concept of, selling a pallet and in bulk, selling a lot of product to a retailer, and that retailer not being able to sell through that product, and then having to mark it down. And this happens mostly in larger retail scenarios, but like them asking now to either buy back the product, the supplier to buy back the product, or to split the difference on the markdown and take away more margin in some way. There's a lot of different strategies here and approaches and negotiations, really, where, this is one where once you invest in infrastructure, once you have this process, starting off drop shipping with a big retailer, one might be a requirement. Home Depot might come to you and say, I'll put you on our website, but that's the only way I'm doing it. I'm not buying 100 of those or whatever it might be. It's a way to get your foot in the door. It's also a way to get new products into a retailer and not be caught in that scenario where you have to buy back your product, or you have to cut on a bunch of margin and get into that awkward scenario with a retailer. So it is a competitive advantage if you invest in it. Nowadays, in this new environment, from what we've seen in retail, retailers are asking for it more, especially post-COVID. So it's a competitive advantage, but is that investment upfront from a people, process, and the technology behind it?
I think from the distributor standpoint too, one thing that I saw all the time having conversations with distributors or brands that either wanted to get on Inventory Source or, learn more about FlexPoint, or anybody that we've ever talked to, it was the holdup that kind of made people not want to switch over. Or again, they have this bad connotation towards it, is the payment side, right? So distributors didn't trust their retailers to say, okay, you're approved, I'm going to give you an invoice in 30 days of all the orders you give me this month. And right, because people could be just sending in orders and orders and orders, and then next thing you know, it's like, okay, here's an invoice, they don't pay it, got to do accounts receivables and like everything. And it's like you have to dedicate a team or a person to that. And it's like, that's labor costs that a distributor didn't want to take on. And then the same side was like, okay, we're not going to do a net 30 terms or a net 60 terms. We're going to bill you right when orders come in, whether it comes from our website or, whatever automated means, if we have any. And that's a person, I've heard multiple companies have a person dedicated to just manually charging, via, let's say, Stripe, for every order that came in all throughout that day. And they didn't have the automated system in place. They also they put somebody in place because they thought they would get a lot of return on, orders and orders and orders coming in. But really, at the end of the day, it's like the bulk purchasing. It's like you make one order right then and there, get the payment, and then it's like they're set for the next few months. So I think from the payment perspective for distributors, that was such a big hurdle for people to get over, or to justify that's like that we should be doing drop shipping, or like, is this a good idea? Like, is this a viable fulfillment model to provide to people? So that was another take that I used to get all the time talking to distributors.
Yeah, it's fundamentally different. They don't, that's why you see a lot of them say you have to order through our website.
Yeah.
And a lot of systems set up where they don't save the card because it's, they don't want to get involved in keeping credit card information. So it makes it fundamentally tough. And then you have to factor in credit card fees into your model, which makes it even more tough. You've got the delay in ACH and potential fraud with chargebacks and things like that in credit cards. So there's a lot of like, all right, we got all the technology, but we need to, maybe they buy a platform, right, that allows them to support that, but then they're like, well, how do we change our process? And so that's that investment that we were talking about, is figuring out how to do it and then implementing it.
Totally agree. So we talked a lot about distributors, right? And I think this is now let's get to the retailers that are selling online, and let's talk about like the retailers specifically that are younger, I guess, per se, right? Like that are constantly on a YouTube or social media platforms. Maybe they are looking for dropship automation services, or they're just involved in e-commerce and things like that. Anything, honestly, anything e-commerce, because they will get those ads of making millions of dollars earning passive income, right? Or make millions of dollars, check out my sweet Lamborghini behind me, like check out this sweet house that I got, drop shipping on Amazon, take my course, things like that. What pops out to you from that perspective, right? The flashy influencers, the flashy gurus, the courses, things like that like a lot of people view drop shipping as bad because that's kind of like their main, outlet to get you to like, make my course, pay for my course. What stands out to you, Travis?
I mean, it's like any other get rich quick scheme. It doesn't exist. I mean, and that's all there is to it. You got to put in hard work. You got to build a business that adds value. And, there's, as long as you focus on value, dropship makes a lot of sense. But they're not pitching value. That's not the sexy YouTube video. It's pitching on how quick you can do something and,
Right.
How easy something is to set up. That's really what it comes down to. So, I mean, that's just never going to work, regardless if it's dropship or selling online courses and coaching.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like before dropshipping, there were, Mary Kate or, all these other different schemes out there you could do to kind of make money on the side. And all of them are equally like appealing. Dropshipping just happens to be another low barrier industry that people can take advantage of. And really, I mean, the takeaway is create videos on low barrier entry stuff, and you'll probably make money that way because that's a better scheme. Yeah, I mean, the thing that gets me is like people are always looking for a way to get out of the 9 to 5, right? You ask anybody universally, if you could quit your job tomorrow and you can just make passive income, like 90% of people in the world are going to say absolutely. And so anytime something like dropshipping comes up where you just have to, starting out, you can just use Oberlo. You don't have to have any relationships whatsoever. You just have to set up a site and try to attract people to your site and sell through Oberlo and Aliexpress. It's a good model for people, and they're gonna do it as a way to try to get out of that 9 to 5 grind. I remember Shopify actually got blasted on this probably about a year or two ago, where people were comparing them to Herbalife, right? Because they did one sort of marketing page or whatever that said something like quit your job and start selling online, or it was kind of the mentality. And so even though Shopify itself is just a platform to sell products, right, they got wrapped into this get rich quick scheme because because of one of their marketing things. So people equally want to get out of the 9 to 5. As in the more modern day, they're getting very good at identifying clickbait, right? And very like, my friends have tried that, or it's been out enough that I know this is not going to work. But the reality is anytime there's mass information out there of how to get rich quick, probably doesn't work, right? And it's really just the person that's telling you that as a way to get rich himself, right? So
yeah, I like that you brought that up, the Shopify. I remember that, and then everyone shorted it. I mean, that really could have just been like Andrew Left or whatever his name was. He really promoted that, right? I remember that's when I bought Shopify for the first time when that happened, because I was like, there's so much misconception out in the market and people just don't understand. Like, they bought Oberlo, which is a drop shipping company, and then they promoted them on the homepage, I think in the footer for a little bit, because they saw a need. They saw value in giving their customers instant access to products, which is right. That's what they saw. And then they looked at it being viable for some companies. Some businesses did go out there and you could go and start a business with Oberlo. And as long as you figure out how to add value to your customer's life and what they're looking for, that's a legitimate business. And so maybe you tell them it's going to take 90 days to get to you, but it's going to be super cheap. And they're completely cool with that. And that's not scammy at all. And that maybe you do get rich, right? We found it's very tough to run a Oberlo Aliexpress business because it's e-commerce all about repeat customers, and doing the Oberlo type approach is very tough to keep repeat customers. So, but like that was the whole thing, where it goes back to people thinking that is a business model and it's this end all be all, where it really is just an approach. And it's just funny how people paint with broad strokes very quickly because it's just the easiest way to, kind of assess something and try to understand it when you don't actually understand it. And that's definitely what happened with that Herbalife comparison to Shopify. That was just utterly hilarious almost.
Yeah, it was. And that's just the idea. Like people are going to naturally gravitate towards something easy. And the second it doesn't work out, like the influencer or whatever said, then now the entire word drop shipping is now kind of muddled with this like bad connotation of like, oh, I've tried that. That's a scam, right? And
Right.
it's almost like equivalent to like a pyramid scheme in some of these places. And it's because like if you take their advice and everybody in the world just starts selling online and they start sourcing from Alibaba or something, it's like that is an unsuccessful model. And you're right to think that's scammy in most scenarios. I mean, like you said, there's a market you carve out there, but people are missing the idea of like if you have an actual legitimate trusted partner. All right, like my mom has a pet store in Ocala, and she's got a brick and mortar store, and they got a Shopify store and started listing their products online there. And it's like for her, it's great. She'll get a couple extra sales. Like she doesn't have major traffic going there or anything, but she gets enough sales to pay for the website, and it's kind of steadily growing. And it makes a lot of sense. She's drop shipping, her vendor's products straight through Shopify. She's not even shipping out of her warehouse most of the time. But for most people, it's just, I have no experience in this industry. I have no relationships built or anything, and I just want to get started and make money. And no matter what ecosystem or industry you go to, that's always going to be a tough thing and probably not going to work out the way you want it to.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that we haven't really touched on is, so the legitimate retailer might want to do it, but they might not be a traditional retailer. Like they might be just a good e-tailer, online retailer who's been doing it for a while. They know how to kind of play the game online. They could be a blogger and have an audience, maybe not. Just know how to do ads, right? They know how to optimize conversions. There's this like the suppliers that are selling to their, traditional wholesale purchasers, right? The traditional retailers, they don't want to at least the retailers don't want the new guys with no brick and mortar costs and are not sending massive orders into their suppliers. They don't want them to come in and just take a shortcut and just jump right in and sell. And so we also did see that where suppliers were pressured from the retailers to not allow drop ship because, hey, I'm buying your stuff in bulk every month. Why are you going to give it to this guy that is just buying, a couple and take a chance on him? You're going to take a chance on losing my business. And so that had barriers there for a while too, which I think those are breaking down because ultimately, one, the suppliers realized that these same retailers that were telling them not to now say, well, drop ship for me, right? So they had to figure out how to do it. And now they're just implementing new process and new technology to do what we said earlier. You got to buy wholesale. We see some that say you need to prove you have a brick and mortar address. So they're putting some restrictions in place to take care of their reseller network. But that's another one where, they're not trying not to piss off their big money retailers that are sending them big bulk orders.
Yeah, and to go back to the needs, that kind of created this idea of like now you need pricing tiers. Like you're one of my better retailers, so we're going to give you 15% off. You're a newbie, so you're actually 15% marked up, right, or something, as a way to get around that tricky equation of how do we enable new people and grow our business, but also treat these guys that have been here for a while, well based on their loyalty. So
we had some distributors too, or brands that I've talked to that specifically stopped drop shipping because they had one or two drop shippers, or maybe 5, maybe 10, just like I don't know if they got taken down, but like Amazon started selling on Amazon. They couldn't restrict people from like taking my data and like selling on Amazon. Like there's no concept of them just like being able to say, hey, you can't sell on Amazon. The retailer's like, okay, sounds good. And they end up doing it. And that was hurting their brand and their products and not being able to sell on that. So I remember people specifically when I would ask, hey, are you drop shipping? Kind of got the response like you did, Travis, where it's like oh, absolutely not. Like we've had way too many people burn us for marketplace sales and things like that too. So like another thing that kind of just added to it is there was no way to restrict people from taking that data and just start selling on Amazon or eBay or Walmart or anything like that, which, I mean, you could technically buy in bulk and still sell on there as well. But
exactly, it was something new, and there was more resellers they were dealing with, so it was tougher to police and control. And adhering to MAP was a part of that issue as well. But if you think about it, it's not stopping; it's opening up to more potential resellers of doing it. The more chance that that's going to happen. But fundamentally, like you said, it could still happen. Someone could go and buy the minimum order quantity and, do the same exact thing. If you invest in that structure, in that infrastructure, in the time, in the process, going into a dropship model actually will help you and prevent that in the future. If you get into a structure where, all right, here's our dropship program, I'm a supplier. If you want to dropship from me, you must use this technology. And this technology is a chain of custody all the way into where you're listing that product. And I have full visibility from it being supplied in my warehouse to it going to where it's going. That is actually the way to prevent that, right? But fundamentally, like, that's such a crazy concept. And it sounds like such an investment in technology that's too tough, right? And we're making that less and less tough for more people. But, syncing map and making sure that prices are, going and staying above map, knowing what ASIN they're listing on, stuff like that, is all stuff you can do through technology. And you can do it when you know where the supply chain ends, which is your warehouse, better than if you were to go sell wholesale and give it to a third party. So it's funny because you're 100% right. It's just, once again, it's a lot of things have to fall into place for it to make sense to go to it and actually solve the problem, which would be drop shipping.
So do you guys think we're kind of out of that phase of people viewing it, negatively? Do you think we'll ever get there?
Prob- it depends on the audience. I think more and more retailers and distributors are getting out of that personally. But I think the public perception, once you have kind of like a scammy thing, at least the perception of that, it's really difficult to change people's minds, I think.
Yeah.
And so I almost think it's kind of like a little bit of a competitive advantage to really understand dropshipping intricately, because, a lot of people in the world think of it as a scammy thing, but at the same time, they go to Amazon and they buy a product and they dropship that from someone, right? And so, like, those that actually are aware of that are taking advantage of that, and they're selling to some of the same people that say that they hate the concept of dropshipping, right? And so I don't know if it's really changing too much, but it's kind of like a natural evolution with Amazon, where it just seems to be more prevalent today.
The top retailers, that's how they became so big. Amazon dropship was a huge part of their model. I mean, it might be rebranded as all things that, the brand loses value, but the model makes a lot of sense, right? Like marketplace, starting your own marketplace is kind of more of that keyword people are keying on. You see, Miracle really leading the way, honestly, in like the enterprise space for like helping people build out a marketplace, which is essentially, when people interview the CEO, they ask them like, you're helping people compete with Amazon, which sounds crazy, but honestly, that's what we're all trying to do if you're selling online in one way or another. So building a multi-vendor marketplace is becoming more of a common thing. Larger enterprises are doing it. So I do think, suppliers are going to be more okay with it because they're getting requests from more and more legitimate retailers who want it. Nordstrom has been a big proponent, Macy's, and both in the apparel space, jewelry and things like that. REI jumping into it and doing more from their side. I know REI made a push a couple years ago into the dropship space. So the more the big retailers adopt it, and then a supplier, there's this whole network of suppliers have to buy into it, then I think it will have a different perception for sure.
Yeah. I think there's always going to be a negative view. I mean, just kind of like how there is in, the world, right? There's always two sides to the equation. And I think some people are always going to think it is scammy. There's a lot of people out there that have started drop shipping and then come to realize it can be very scammy going down the avenues of, go ahead.
Well, it's just like scammy, like that word. It's like really there's the informed and the uninformed, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're informed on what dropship is. There's that view of it, and and whether you believe it in a fulfillment model as a supplier or a retailer, and like who we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And then there's the consumer, or the like, what's all the words? Aspiring entrepreneur is probably the best one I like to use. The aspiring entrepreneur, which I've been had many failed endeavors. I don't know how many times I've just tried to open a site or something and just lost interest and whatever. So the aspiring entrepreneur, the uninformed aspiring entrepreneur, might look at it and make a quick assumption and say Shopify is like Herbalife, right? Like that is the thing for sure. But then there's this actual legitimate retail industry that I think it could basically the scamming is not even a part of that, right? It's more like, does it make sense for my business model in general? Do we see it being part of an industry in general? Something I probably wish I would have thought more about before this podcast, but like, I'm curious where else, you'd see that in the industry, where usually if it makes enough sense to stick around this long, it's going to become adopted, and the haters are going to go away, eventually, right? I've compared it to the cloud before, right? That's the closest one I've got, where there's still some disadvantages to the cloud, and there's a hybrid private versus public, but ultimately it's not viewed negatively at all in the way it was, right? And it was very much viewed negatively. Like, I'm not going to just let someone handle my data. I'm sure there's other comparisons to other, but it feels like it's gained enough traction and been around long enough to the informed people, people in the industry, that I could see a point where it is no longer a majority, negatively viewed thing at all, completely.
I honestly, I do like that, like, pyramid scheme, like kind of it's maybe not pyramid scheme, maybe more like affiliate marketing, where, you know, you guys would have, mom would have the show at her house selling Mary Kay, or you got the friend that's trying to sell you books, back in college, and it's like this whole pyramid scheme thing. But at the same time, and we all viewed that as very like negatively, like don't try to sell me the pyramid scheme, or like don't try to get me on that. But at the same time, some of like the big purchases that I make, I want to go get information from that person that has the domain knowledge, so I can make the most informed decision on, instead of this mower, get this mower, instead of this, really high pricing, get this high pricing because of this and this. And they're in affiliate marketing, but you're kind of leveraging that domain expertise that they have, so it can kind of be viewed, both ways. I can't think of anything else though. I like that cloud example though. That one makes a lot of sense.
Yes. So real quick, pyramid scheme, I'm not a big fan of that. I think that's the perception way back in the day. But it's like,
Yeah.
as you learn more about a pyramid scheme, it becomes like more apparent that this is not going to work, right? Whereas like drop shipping, as you learn more about it, it becomes more like, oh, there's actually some practical application for this, right? Another good comparison might just be like the blockchain, right? It's kind of like that, where it started out as this gimmicky, like innovative thing, and everybody talked about it, and then people started using, like, well, what's this actually used for? But now, these days there's legitimate like supply chain, government usage, things that you actually could apply the blockchain for. It makes a lot of sense for those use cases. And it took a while to kind of learn about the intricacies. You had to go through this gimmicky phase of people, trying to fit that into use cases that don't really fit, right? And realizing it didn't work. And that's very much like, dropshipping shouldn't be looked at as a get rich quick scheme, right? That's the gimmicky part of it. But as you learn more about the practical applications for it, there's a lot of potential real uses out there, right? So blockchain, Bitcoin could potentially be another one, where it's like these started out with some negative, or maybe initially positive, then kind of a negative phase. And then people started to learn more about it, started to gain some understanding of what's actually happening. They found out with dropshipping, oh, I don't have to dropship from a Chinese supplier. Dropshipping still counts if I'm doing a US based distributor, and they understand the difference between the model versus what, people are advocating for on YouTube or things like that. And when you learn that distinction, you learn more about dropshipping, it becomes more practical. And I think that's happened over the years in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there's like, I think it was Steve Ballmer or whoever. I'm pretty sure it's Ballmer. There's this quote of him, or at least there's like this video clip where he's talking about like, our users want a keypad on their phone. Like, this is ridiculous. You can't have just a non-keypad phone, or whatever you end up calling it when they're talking about the iPhone. Like, it's a fad. Like, that is, but then as you see the advantages, there's a lot of disadvantages right out the gate. You're like, how do I used to be able to be so quick on this BlackBerry, right? And then now I got to relearn how to like swipe and do all this stuff. And you got to invest in the new technology of figuring it out. But then once you get rid of the keypad, you see all the advantages to not having it, right? Electric cars, same thing. A lot of downside to electric car out the gate. How am I supposed to go more than 300 miles? All this kind of stuff. Well, once you get the infrastructure, once a lot of things fall into place, then it's like, as long as there's underlying value in there that is undeniable, it will take over, right? Or at least it'll get to the point where it'll earn respect within the industry. And I think non-keypad phones, right, the touchscreen phone, electric cars could be looked in they were definitely viewed negatively right out the gate. I'm making sure I align those together. Dropship is like the
You guys
iPhone.
ready your BlackBerry, man? Is that?
I was, I bought like the Bobo one, like it was like some T-Mobile. I thought it was as cool as a BlackBerry, but people told me it was not. So
Yeah.
I was 100% that guy though. Like I did not want to get rid of my BlackBerry. Like right when we started coming out with touchscreens, I couldn't make the switch.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of having a full keyboard. I remember I was probably in high school or middle school at the time. I don't remember, but probably not that long ago. But I remember getting a phone with a keyboard, the little slider out, and you could do the keyboard in those.
It's a sidekick. Was it the side? Was it the sidekick? The flip? No, it was good. Cool. Any thoughts that you guys can think of that we want to touch on a little bit here, coming towards the end?
It's like the iPhone.
Drop shipping's like the iPhone.
No, I mean, yeah, I think I don't have a ton. I mean, it just comes down to, that's why I know we're in a good space. That's why I like playing in the space. I believe fundamentally that there's a lot of value in what the dropship fulfillment model provides the retail industry, what it provides a supplier, what it provides just the relationship in what we've seen in traditional supply chain. And it's one of those things like when you believe in it and when it makes sense to you, like double down, like I never invest in anything I don't really fully understand, right? Missed out on the crypto because it took me a while to really, and who knows if I still fully understand it. But like, I feel like it comes back to that informed and non-informed, like investing in Shopify, Twilio, like those companies where the underlying fundamental value there that they offer. And I think dropship is, if there's anything I can say from this like episode of this podcast, is like there is some significant value for the ones that figure it out. And those that view it negatively just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
Just about anything good is controversial when it comes out until enough time to kind of erode that controversy. So
yeah, either until they get informed or they get like either the distributor or the retailer gets that one partner that they're doing drop shipping through or with, like that ticks that margin, right? That ticks is like, wow, look at all this volume coming through from this good retailer. So like almost in my eyes is like the more good retailers we get out there, the more good distributors we get out there, the more it's not going to be viewed negatively.
And the last part, just to, it might not be for everyone, right? It might not be for everyone, but I think one thing, you see this direct to consumer movement where it's a brand goes, well, I'm not going to drop ship because I don't even resell. I sell my stuff direct to a consumer. So I'm drop shipping to a consumer directly, right? So they're never going to do drop ship in their mind, but it really comes down to, do you believe in the business to business resale of your product? And I'm what we've seen in direct to consumer is it works really well. And there's a lot of reasons why you would want to just come up with a product and a brand and then sell it directly to a consumer. But at some point, customer acquisition and all that kind of stuff breaks down with a lot of DTC brands. But at some point, if you have another channel where you can push more product, you're going to want to open up to that. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon where, I've decided to be a DTC brand and I will never sell to another business. So if that's the case, then dropship is probably not for you. And there's a lot of scenarios where maybe it doesn't make sense in the next 5 years, maybe 10 years because of your product size or your product positioning or margin or whatever it might be. But for anyone that is reselling in the retail industry, there's a good chance that it could make sense for you if you just invested in it. So not saying it's for everyone, but it definitely is a competitive advantage in most scenarios.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree.
You had the choice to just sell on Amazon or sell on Amazon and eBay and Walmart, right? It's like if you have the capabilities, you might as well sell on all those kind of channels, and all those are direct to consumer. Same concept apply to like a business relationship where you have the potential to do more volume, right, and grow your business as long as it makes sense for your business, and it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yep. No, I agree. Really good points, guys. Appreciate you jumping on today. So that was the latest episode. Obviously talking about why drop shipping can be viewed negatively. If you guys have any thoughts, any ideas that you want to talk about on the podcast, you can head over to flexpoint.com. It's a team we're on, and you can go to the blog and fill out one of our forms, ask us any questions. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, and be on the lookout for the next podcast. Thanks, guys.
See you later.